Welcome aboard to the Cross Commission Saturday Power Hour, where we've got a lot to talk to in just about an hour's time. I'm Ryan. We got Safe, the Go Birds of the football variety. We got Jake, the Go Birds of the baseball variety, as you see in his wall. And yes, we will have, and the Terps. Me. Well, Orange women look good today, so at least we got that. We'll see if Team USA get a big victory tonight in hockey. Do note, because I do have to do this disclaimer, it's for the hockey reasons, not for any geopolitical reasons. So that is that. I just want to get that out there. But so a lot to talk about in today. Adam's already pulling our leg. Gil, before the show, already saying, Maryland's demise was greatly exaggerated.
Tell him. Never, Cuse was like a three goal favorite, something like that. A man on this podcast once said, that Earth, water covers
3/4 of the Earth.
John
covers the rest.
Then he picked Syracuse.
I'm trying to take it back. I honestly, I think I was like, oh no, because I found him was like, oh, this isn't Terp. This is in College Park. I was like, oh, because I thought if this was in a dome, it'd be rock and rolling maybe, but going in. But I was like, oh,
we encourage.
And then you were like, be a man of integrity, and you're like, don't switch. I was like,
we encourage conviction on this.
Gotta stick your neck out sometimes. Take a big swing.
See, I picked Maryland the whole way because me, as a guy who always looks at trends, like for instance, how Virginia never beats
big data
Duke,
guy, Ryan,
and Princeton never beats Syracuse. Well, Maryland Syracuse has not beaten a John Tillman coached Maryland team, so real ball heads know, even with homerism.
7-0. I mean.
But I am a real data guy. I was actually on our school's, we were part of Harvard University's DataWise program last year, and I was part of that team.
I waited so long on that Penn State-Princeton thing, and I totally wanted to pick Princeton, and I just... And
the irony was Adam was wanting to switch to Penn State when he found out it was in the bubble, so I should have just swapped the two.
I wanted to pick Georgetown. I basically just, on those two, Georgetown, and Princeton, Penn State, was like, I feel like these games we should just have even splits. Which, listen, some other folks out there didn't decide to heed the heed the warnings. Just decided to go full bore. Just went all out.
Sue so many influencers for that.
Listen,
ruining us.
Sometimes it's smart to have some restraint and. Have someone out there responsible to take the
honest 50-50
picks.
A
fall guy is good when you're doing predictions. Just saying. Just always
just ask us the other week when we all picked Utah.
We all picked Utah. See how look how that went.
We learned our lesson.
Exactly.
We have integrity. We're not like the NFL Live crew who unanimously picked the Chiefs and then unanimously picked the Eagles. We have integrity here at the Cross Commission.
Ethical podcast program. Just like how we're going to ethically try and get this done in 1 hour. Might not though.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover here, so it's going to be tough. We're going to try to get this in within an hour.
All right.
We got 7 people in here already. Thank you for your time, folks.
Yeah, thank you all.
Love to see it.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you for liking this program and
and subscribing as well.
We appreciate you for liking, wanting to spend your Saturday night with us. And if you like this program so much, Ryan, what can they do?
Hit that subscribe button
and
hit the like button on the video.
There you go.
Turn on notifications
and follow us on @college_cross on Twitter, the everything app.
There we go. All right, let's get into it. Waste no time.
All right.
right.
So the
Clock
1
started.
hour on the clock. Godspeed in actually getting this in within an hour. Jake loading me pouting time. Maryland 11, Syracuse 7. Was a very good lacrosse game for most of it, though. It was, two top programs really bringing some good stuff. But late third quarter and fourth quarter charge out of Maryland puts the game away and give the Terps the victory in College Park to, again, as I said at the top of the show, continue their winning streak over Syracuse to now an odd 7. But yeah, Maryland's defense, I think the big story of it, I think when you look at how this game shook out, Maryland got, some good looks on offense and scored, but though the Syracuse defense also did pretty decently for the first 5/8 of the game. They did a good job forcing turnovers, and McCool looked good for the first 5/8 of the game as well. But then the real story was Maryland not letting Syracuse be able to have their offense really humming. Now, we were discussing this in the DM. Syracuse was able to get some good looks, but a combination lack of the execution, I think, some of the shot selection left a lot to be desired, especially trying to go behind the back as a strategy rather than just shooting straight in, which the story of the Syracuse program for the past 9 years now with behind the back stuff. And of course, goaltending playing a big role there too with Maryland. But otherwise, not letting Syracuse really be able to get those looks. Yes, 5/8 of the game, the first 2 quarters and half the third quarter. So Maryland looking impressive, looking like they are much better team than the first 2 weeks of the season showed, and putting themselves back into that title contender talk, which, as we're going to discuss in this show, things are starting to open up where it's going to be more and more open, and the Terps are putting themselves back at the table that they always have been. For the Orange, earlier in the week, great victory against Towson, but now, I don't know, it's the same old friggin' Syracuse at this point now, where it kind of reminds me a little bit of, for an upstate New York analogy, kind of like the Bills when they play the Chiefs in the playoffs. Teams like Maryland, teams like Notre Dame, teams like, to an extent, Virginia, teams like Cornell are in their heads. They stop playing what makes them so good against other teams. And I know that, yes, it was their first time out of the dome, but I don't think them being outside for the first time really played as much of a role as Maryland's defense, because I think, again, Syracuse's defense looked fine outdoors. It's more so that I think these teams that they need to get over, in order to get over the hump, are the teams they continue to trip over, Maryland being one of them. And that's a concern I have for the season. I know everything devolves around, can Syracuse win the quarterfinal to get into the Final Four? Well, the issue is, in the quarterfinal, you're more than likely going to be playing Maryland, Cornell, or, that same class of teams. So the concerns are back for Syracuse. Maryland, back to kind of where they left off anyway, and quell the concerns from the past couple of weeks, especially that you had, Jake. So, yeah, we'll let the other homer go first with Jake on your views of the game. I think, Jake, you are.
My mic is me. This is the second time I've done this. It's too much. I did virtual teaching this week. This is the problem. I'm not. I got out of a groove. With this. Anyhow, I am happy. It was a good game. After watching, watch that Virginia Richmond game to start. You see those fail clears, and you saw some of the other. You watch a lot of February lacrosse too. That's how you watch a lot of February lacrosse. Sometimes you're like, man, what the hell? Sometimes I wonder, what sport I'm watching.
Yeah, this was a well-played game. Very little in terms of turnovers.
Yeah, only 18 combined turnovers from both teams. Only 2 failed clears combined from both teams. A lot of second chance opportunities. Both teams, especially Syracuse, had a lot of, probably the story of the game in some ways. Syracuse had a lot of second chance opportunities early in the game and was not able to cash in on them. And I think the game really played out to type in the way that me and Safe talked about it on the pod on Wednesday. This was not, the phrase Ryan likes to use, lacrosse is a game of runs. This was not a game of runs. No team had a 2-goal lead in this game until Eric Spano scored to give Maryland a 7-5 lead with 1:42 left in the third quarter. It was teams traded off having a 1-goal lead. There was a couple times where Maryland scored with 5 seconds left in the first quarter, and then A.J. Larkin's goal, which is crazy because he blocked a shot with his head and then scooped up ground ball later and went down and scored to go up 3-2. That was at the end of the first quarter into the second quarter. Joey Spallina scored 2 goals unassisted. That was his big contribution towards the end of the first half. With 2 straight Cuse goals to give them the lead. Other than that, this was a one-goal game throughout. And the goals came, you 2 minutes apart. 5:57 for Cuse, 3:12, 5:57, then 3:12, 1:15, 10:35, 7:13, 2:29. Big chunks of time apart these goals were coming at. And then we talked about that kind of big swing in the game. Maryland leads 6-5, and Cuse takes a penalty for being offsides. Spano scores to put Maryland up 7-5. Maryland wins the faceoff. Spano scores again to put Maryland up 8-5. In a low-scoring game with long possessions, especially on the Maryland end, Cuse did try to push the pace in this game. That really opens the game up. From that point on, the Cuse does immediately kind of come back and down and score with 17 seconds to kind of stem the tide and make it 8-6. The fourth quarter was 3-1 to Maryland, but if you go after that point, when Maryland goes up 8-5, it's 3-2 the rest of the way. This is part of overall. Maryland scores the first 4 goals of the third quarter. It's that little pocket right there. 5-4 Cuse at halftime. The third quarter after this is 3-2. Maryland has a moment there, and really even Maryland scores man up.
Really,
Maryland scores man up with Elliot Dubik at 12:51. It's from 5:38 to 43. It's a stretch of 5 minutes where Maryland scores 3 goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Syracuse was playing a pretty clean game up to that point. That was, I think, only their second EMO given up. I think at that point too.
Cuse took 3 in the whole game.
Yeah, so they were playing a clean game too. That wasn't even an issue of taking too many penalties. It was just Maryland got their EMO and cashed in on it. But in a game of thin margins, that's what mattered.
Yes, and you talk about like Cuse taken 14 penalties in 3 games. It had been a problem. Now their man-up defense had been very good, but still, I said like if Cuse took a lot of penalties in this game, like we saw, if Cuse had taken more, Maryland went 2 for 2. If they had taken more, it would probably been a big problem. Cuse took 2 in that third quarter. Maryland scored on both of them. So it was one stretch that allowed Maryland to get separation, and that was the game. Maryland got a little bit of separation, and that was the deciding factor in this ball game. Right there, to pull the game away. Overall, I think on the Cuse's offense towards Maryland's defense, that's kind of been the theme what you were talking about. Sometimes, man, I think you just get beat. I think Cuse tried to push the pace. Certainly, they had a lot of shots in this game. Just looking at they had 41 shots, 9 more than Maryland did. Maybe you could argue about not putting enough on goal, 19 on goal. Maybe that's what you talk about, some of the behind the back and things like that. Granted, look, that some of that comes down to what we've talked about. When you don't win matchups one-on-one, what do you have to do? Well, you do have to sometimes resort to some of these opportunities. And they didn't win a lot of matchups one-on-one in this game. They haven't won a lot of matchups against Maryland, period. One-on-one. Will Schaller did, I thought, a very good job against Joey Spallina. Spallina did have kind of moments there towards the end, but overall, this is kind of the story for Spallina against Maryland, and again for Spallina against in these kind of big time matchups. He hasn't, the production dips, which is it's going to dip, but he doesn't make the same imprint on the game. So 41 shots. They didn't get a lot in transition. I think that's one thing you could probably say. But still, like, their average possession was like 35 seconds, which when that's the case, says you're playing fast. Their first shot came early in the shot clock, about 30 seconds. They didn't turn the ball over. They had 9 turnovers, so it wasn't as if they were sloppy. There were moments, I think you could tell early in that first half, like there were passes that were being kind of dropping out of sticks. That kind of told me, like, hey, this is a team playing their first outdoor game, especially with the rain, things like that. But overall, if you only turn the ball over 9 times, you fail 1 clear, you get a bunch of shots on goal, over 1 shot per possession, and you have that many opportunities, or and you play that pace. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think you just got beat. The defense was just better. And like Gil says here, McDaniel's back to being, a dominance. I think he's played sharp to this point of the season. I don't think he's been asked to make very many tough saves. I think he's looked really sharp early on. I think clearing the ball, he's been really solid, which is where he seemed to get himself into trouble. I think I don't know if we mentioned in the pod that there was a shoulder issue. I think he had to get cleaned up in fall ball. But safe, you good? Okay, sounds good. So that might have contributed to some of those things, last year. But overall, Maryland's defense so far this year, look, you hold teams 3 weeks in a row to single digits in the shot clock era, you're playing incredible defense. Like that's also what, like, their defense is locked in. They're deep on that side of the ball. They are communicating incredibly well. Teams are just not getting great looks against them. It's just not happening against them. Out of everything they're doing is making it hard on the defense. When Cuse has to take behind the back shots, that's what happens. And I think you even saw that to agree compare Richmond week 1 to what they did against Virginia. Richmond got a lot of looks kind of inside, like good looks inside the crease and things like that. They were able to establish they didn't against Maryland. Maryland is not letting you do what you want to do against them defensively. And I think that's the main story here. There's other things like offensively. But like for Cuse thing, it's like, listen, man, sometimes you just get beat. Like, tip your cap. The other team outplayed you.
Yeah, I think that's like kind of the one at least silver lining out of this is there's not really too much to adjust. Just execute a little bit better on offense. They'll be fine. It's just, I guess, again, that's another opportunity slipped. And I think that's the story of Syracuse lacrosse.
That's a reoccurring theme. Let's Save chime in with this. So it's a reoccurring theme, I guess, for Syracuse is, we played a big game and the offense, got kind of shut down. It's fair. Yeah.
On the Maryland side, it kind of reminded me of some of the more big Maryland playoff wins. Like I'm thinking of the Duke game last year. And actually, maybe 2 times you guys played Duke. Just a point in time when, it was kind of close, or even the Duke game last year were behind, but like there's something that changes, and it's just like this is a shift, and it just felt like first half seemed like Maryland was trying to do what it needed to do to stay with Cuse. It felt like Cuse was kind of like percolating or bubbling up. Maybe like you could maybe see the explosion. The the announcers, I don't know if they were Syracuse alums or wherever. I thought it was at a Dome game, just the tone of the broadcast, just like kind of an awe of the Syracuse team. And then that second half, I think Big Mac really locked in. Ryan, you made a couple of points in the DMs, like, or maybe it was Adam, like some of the shots maybe weren't as difficult, and so he was kind of able to swallow them up. But I felt like, it just started to feel like, oh, maybe for him especially, like, oh, this is the way it happens. Like, start to make a couple saves, get a couple clutch goals. I think a couple really big juice goals that really helped Maryland, like, stay in it, especially in the first half. That AJ goal, that off a transition, I thought that was like, really big, important goal for Maryland. But yeah, it kind of felt like a Duke game, like at least the ones in the tournament versus when they match up against the Terps, or even like the UVA game in the Final Four. Just it didn't have the dominance at the dot that you would normally have, under Big Luke, but it still had a really solid game at the goal, using the shot clock to your advantage, imposing your will, like putting your style of play and forcing Syracuse to react in that. I think it was just kind of in quicksand a little bit for the Orange. Like once they, started getting down, like probably rushing some shots, or, as they kind of say, tightly holding the sticks and stuff like that. And it just kind of fell into place. This is what Maryland does. They kind of force you to play their style, and then all of a sudden you just like feel like long time periods of time without the possession. Like that's routinely, I was kind of thinking to myself, I was like, it just didn't feel like Cuse had the ball at all. Maybe if they did, it was like,
they had the ball.
One shot, like wasn't like, but it's just like wasn't like, kind of what they were doing like throughout the the beginning, first couple of weeks of the year, and it was because Maryland was making them play a different style, and so hat tip to Tillman, just another masterful performance in terms of like schemes and stuff like that and adjustments.
Yeah, Cuse had the ball. I think it's just they weren't super threatening offensively. I think it's, but I think ultimately, I think the credit for that goes to the Maryland defense. Obviously, yes, for Cuse, these games have become common. I think it's just it's against Maryland's defense. Last before we move on to this one, because we got a lot to get into. I like kind of what Maryland did offensively. Adam kind of mentioned this, chat. I think they got some of these big kind of midfielders that they've got. Stovall had a nice shot, kind of showcase that we've been waiting for. Dowd, and Spanos is percolating. I'm not going to get to it. He's had these moments. He has some moments in these seasons where it feels like he's maybe ready to break out, and then it doesn't quite happen. But he had 4 goals last week, 2 goals and 2 assists. He can be he's not a tour-time guy, but there's 60-point potential there for him to be like an All-American. And if that happens, there's the offense can really grow. They can get behind him and ride some of that. They played a lot of guys. I think that gave Cuse some trouble defensively. They rode it, like they played a bunch of guys at the midfield, and I think it threw Cuse off a little bit defensively. Just how many guys they were subbing on. It allowed just kind of more space to be created. At times, I think it gave Maryland trouble just because it meant through the subbing on, the shot clock wound down a lot, especially in that second quarter. But different faces coming on, it allowed Maryland to get the ball movement working a little better and create some looks, and they shot the ball really well in this game. Second game after the Ridley game was what it was. This is the second game that Maryland shot the ball pretty well, and that's a positive sign. For Cuse, this was the stat I found. I think that kind of just sums everything up. Like, obviously, again, I don't think they should take too much of it, but I think it sums it up. Against Notre Dame, Maryland, and Virginia since 2019, so the last full Desco season pre-COVID, they are 3-15 against Notre Dame, Duke, and Virginia since 2019. Pardon me, not Notre Dame. Against Notre Dame, Maryland, and Virginia since 2019. So there you go. Notre Dame, Maryland, Virginia since 2019. They are 3-15. 3-15 against Notre Dame, Maryland, Virginia since 2019. Against Duke.
And I think,
go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, and I don't think that number gets any better if you throw Cornell in the mix.
No, against Cornell, Hopkins, and Duke since 2019, they're 7-7. They've beaten Cornell. They're like 1-1 against Cornell. They played Cornell like twice since 2019. They haven't played them often. They lost them in 2014, but they beat them in 2019, I think. They lost them in 2013. If you swap Cornell for North Carolina since 2019, they're 9-10. It's hard to get a bigger like designation for like the gap there against kind of quarterfinal-ish teams. The teams that haven't won the title, they're right there. They trade off wins. Against the teams that have won the title, they're not getting wins. So there you go. Speaking of Virginia,
the upset of the season so far.
Yeah.
Richmond 13, Virginia 10. Richmond has, of course, as a program, developed the reputation of being a giant killer. And they're back into that swing of things this year as they take down the Hoos in a Virginia Commonwealth derby with a score of 13-10. This is the same Richmond team that got shut out the first half against Maryland 2 weeks ago, and now here they are with a big victory over the Hoos. And the Cavaliers looked out of sorts all throughout this one. It is definitely a departure from what we've seen in the past couple years for Virginia. Just not looking like the same Virginia team that they had. But again, this is a Richmond team that's built their reputation on beating ACC and Big Ten schools in February and March, and they're back to living that up. And we're discussing in the DMs of the game, the rest of the A-10s looking a bit down. This could be a huge opportunity for Richmond to pounce, already having this huge out-of-conference win.
I mean, this is the talk of the preseason, Jake, when we were talking about the A-10. Like, we want to see that next step, and not to discredit what Richmond has done, but I thought this was the best of these type of wins that Richmond's ever had. Just straight up from the beginning of the whistle through the end of the game. No lulls, no letting them back in. There was a point in time in the fourth where I was just like not like this, but, held their composure. And Ryan, your point about Virginia is so right, because this is the year of transition. There is, so many changes, just so many faces that were mainstays at Virginia who are no longer there. Lars is Lars. We know he'll be able to recruit the next, wave of superstars. But I was like, when they showed that first half stat, I was like, this felt like a 2017, like a UVA game. Like, just,
yes,
just out of sorts, throwing the ball over the place, not really disciplined, bad penalties. The McKay penalty, I guess taunting, like right after his goal, unnecessary, like, young, obviously, and he'll learn from that. But we've always said that the real hitters don't really need to chat. They just let their game talk. So he'll obviously that'll he'll grow out of that and obviously become to not hurt his team in a position like that when they're actually seem to get some motivation. But yeah, just juiceless Virginia team that didn't kind of something. Probably haven't seen yet, close to a decade, since Lars was first there. So it kind of not predicted like it was going to be a difficult time for UVA fans. But this is not going to be as you noted in a couple of those tweets, Jake. This isn't your older brother's UVA team. Maybe it will be after a few. They get everything sorted together. Right? And Lars and that staff is, they're going to do a great job. But like I said, yeah, just a year of transition, and I think this was like the first real evidence of that in the 2025 season. Oh yeah, Adams, yeah, great.
Richmond led wire to wire in this game. But not only that, Richmond scored their first goal to go ahead. Max Merklinger scored at 14:03 to put the Spiders up. This 100% Adams. Yeah, like So I'll get back to this point. Adam's point is very true. Richmond scores a 14:03 with Max Merklinger to go up 1-0. Richmond led the entire rest of the game. Virginia never led in this game. So 100% point on that. Richmond goes into Charlottesville and wins wire to wire. 100% big time. After that, Lucas Littlejohn scores at 11:50, so 2 minutes, 13 seconds later. That is the only time. That 2 minute and 13 second pocket is the only period of time in the game Virginia was down by 1 goal. 2 minutes and 13 seconds in the first quarter is the only time in the game Virginia trailed by 1 goal. Like, not only did Richmond win this game, Virginia never really got close. Like, Virginia just never had an opportunity to. Like, Virginia gets within, and then after that, 43 seconds later, Littlejohn scores to put them up 3-0. The next time Virginia gets within 2 goals is 8:56 of the third quarter. And after that, Richmond immediately, two minutes later, scores to go back up by 3. And then they score a minute after that to go up by 4. Virginia doesn't get back to 2 goals shots with a minute left. Like, Virginia was not Virginia truly, when you actually look at it, like, you're watching this and you're like, as you should say, like, oh, man, Richmond's got to keep scoring. You know, like, they need to. Every time Virginia got a goal, you're like, oh, this is the start of a run. You know, Richmond needs to answer this, and they did answer it. But when you're actually looking at it, Virginia was never really in this game. Like, if you're not within 2 goals, if you're 2 goals, except for 1 minute left you're not in the game. Like, Richmond just won this game comfortably. And yes, I think Adam's point here is when he said they're 2 halves for their own good, and Lars about the settled 6-on-6 offense. We watched Richmond 2 weeks ago against Maryland play a 6-on-6 half-court game, and they could not score. I mean, they could get nothing against Maryland in the half court. Now, granted, right now, Maryland's half-court defense looks like the best defense in the country. But I'm watching Virginia play this back-and-forth crazy game. And Richmond, it looks like Richmond's thriving on it. The opportunity to play a game where it's unsettled and they can kind of get confidence. And I'm like, man, slow it down. Like, you have 3 6-foot poles back, like giant 6'6" poles back there. Make them beat you. And when defensively for Virginia, once things got kind of settled down, the defense played well. The offense, however, could never really get into any rhythm. And part of that was even when they finally got it to Ware and Greenspan, when they got it to 11-8, and they blew like 2 clears after that. I save your point. You made that point like the fourth quarter when it looked like concerning. They blew 2 clears immediately, Virginia. Even the defense finally kind of got things going. And so, yeah, like Adam says, we have not really seen Virginia's 6-on-6 offense through 2 games. The Colgate game was a hockey game. I mean, it's back and forth. It's crazy. There's just ridiculous numbers. And so far here, yes, it gives off vibes of kind of 2017 Virginia. The ball's just going back and forth every play basically, and it's Richmond really thrived on the opportunity to not have to basically beat Virginia to have to dodge against those poles and to have to win matchups. They got to beat the Ride. They beat the Ride on a half court shot. They really, I think they took it as an opportunity as like, okay, like, we're not scared of your Ride. That doesn't scare us. What does scare us is maybe Fulton and Schroeder and those guys. That might scare us, but we're not scared of this. And Virginia's inability to kind of get things back on the rails was a real story here. They couldn't do it. And that was often the story, early on with Virginia. Those 2017 games was like, they did have moments where it all worked, but then when it would go off and not work, they couldn't get it back. They couldn't harness it again. Do I think Lars will? I'm sure. Kind of. I think part of it. I think not calling timeouts at points. You probably look. He's going to let these guys work through it and play. That's how he coaches. He's not going to be bothered by the defeat. He wants them to kind of figure it out, and obviously that makes sense. That's how he's going to do this. I think they're going to, it's not. Look, 2 weeks ago we all kind of jumped off the Richmond bandwagon that we'd sort of built for ourselves, and which we probably should have clearly stuck on. So we shouldn't bury Virginia over this. There's still pieces here for this team. Again, defensively, once they kind of got things settled down, I thought their defense looked good. I thought Morris looked good for them. Ware had an incredible game. 2 goals, 2 goals, 6 ground balls, 3 caused turnovers, which is nuts. But yeah, it's kind of there's questions here, but what balance do they wind up striking? And how do they do that? Because they're going to have to find a way to, I think, can they play the way that Virginia usually plays without the usual? Do they have as much depth at short stick DVD as they usually do? I don't know. That's kind of a question. And obviously, Lars trusts that top 6 group as much as he usually do with all that they've lost. It is, as Saves mentioned with the transition, with losing Schellenberger and losing Cormier. So that, again, we haven't seen their 6-on-6 offense much. I think it's, it's going to, at some point you're going to need those guys. I think, I think it's worth, if it's going to be growth, growing pains, I think it's worth at some point, Lars, I think it's probably worth, let him play, I think you're always going to have the Ryan that in the back pocket. I think it's probably, you got to see what you got with those guys on that end of the field. You got to let that offense kind of, and they had a possession there. I remember where Millen, once they finally kind of settled it down on that end of the field, Millen just ran right by his defender and scored the one safe mention where he, after he got a penalty for talking too much. And it was and that was kind of a microcosm. It's something went well and that, they got a penalty for it. But it's look, trust the guys. I don't think Millen's Schellenberger yet, obviously, but I think you do need to kind of trust those guys on that end a little bit more. But that'll be kind of the question for them, is how they kind of balance this, set the structure element.
Yeah, so we'll see. As we know, the Lars is one of the best at making a team be its best as later on in the season as it progresses. But definitely some growing pains at the moment for the Who's. Probably the most exciting game of the day was one that got moved into a bubble last minute. So we had the AMSR web stream of it. And it turned out to be a dandy. Top 10 matchup between Princeton and Penn State goes down to the wire and into extra time. And after a frenetic Penn State comeback to knot the game up and send it to overtime, Princeton gets a big defensive stop, turns it the other way, and then gets the game-winning goal to start their season with an 11-10 victory over the Nittany Lions. Big day for McAsee, 5 goals and an assist. Craddock with 21 saves as well for the Tigers, ending up becoming a huge difference as Princeton team with a lot of hype heading into the season. This was a game that you looked into as a kind of a big trap game to start their season with the difficult season that they had ahead. Haven't gotten their sea legs like Penn State had. Then the last minute change into the bubble where you never know how goalies are going to see the ball in an indoor environment like that. But Princeton starts off 1-0, and that could be exactly what sets up a huge start to the season for them. They got a huge matchup with Maryland next week, then that Duke-UNC doubleheader. But that is exactly what you want if you're a Princeton to start the season off 1-0 when you have these expectations heading into it.
I think this game kind of played out exactly as we expected on both ways. Princeton's offense had a bit too much firepower for Penn State. In the end, they were able to kind of give themselves a lead that Penn State just couldn't kind of claw back from. You kind of saw, Princeton got to the early. They got, I think, 3-1 or 4-1, and every time I kind of didn't. I had the eye on Loyola Hopkins at this point in time, so I'm sure Safe did as well. Every time I kind of looked over, it was like Penn State scores to get to like 6-3, 6-4, 7-5. So Penn State hung around, but Princeton's offense was able to build themselves a big enough advantage with their offense and how efficient it was, especially because Penn State dominated the faceoffs in this game. But on the flip side, we mentioned that, and then when they got the goal, the possession in overtime, they were able to convert and win. On the flip side, we mentioned, what if first game for Princeton, specialty areas, they didn't come out. I mean, one of the specialty areas, not the second, obviously, because Craddock was tremendous. What if they were a little slow in terms of the specialty areas? And what if kind of legs in the fourth quarter? That proved true as well. And Penn State was able to dominate 12 of 18 on the faceoffs, and then they just chipped away. And it's a testament to what Penn State does so well. That coaching staff always makes adjustments, and they were able to use that face-off advantage, pull themselves back in the fourth quarter, and they got it to a 10-10 advantage, or a 10-10 tie, rather. But Penn State had two chances to tie, and then overtime as well. So positives for both teams. Good game. But Princeton just really, considering it, shot 35%. Not as many possessions. We can think about it. Only won 6 faceoffs. That offense, we got to like what you saw earlier on. Maxey 5 goals, Burns 4 goals, and getting the win.
Yeah, aside from Kabiri not really making too much of an impact, I'm with you, Jake. I think Princeton fans, very happy with the offense. This was the first time Princeton has played a current big or ACC opponent to start the season since 2005. So I think that goes back to kind of what we're talking about in the offseason, in the preseason part, Jake, about Princeton's ambitious schedule, maybe gives us an impression of what Maryland believes that his team is capable of. And, road game, as you noted, in the bubble. I don't know if that was a last-second bubble decision, because I didn't see that anywhere else until Princeton put that tweet out. So if that was last second, you had to factor that in, into your game plans and stuff like that. So maybe that that wasn't. I don't know exactly how that played out, but I just meant for a Princeton team to go on the road and against a really quality opponent that was right on the edge of the top 10, and to come out with a victory, especially the way that Penn State stormed back. If anyone watched the broadcast, it was just an old school, just fan cam and the coaches booth, where the view, no announcer, no score, no shot clock, no timeouts, no score bug. It was just grimy. You loved it. And whenever you scored, they had to show the scoreboard, because that was the closest thing that they could have to graphics. But shout out to Penn State for at least letting us watch. But the Lions came back and kind of hear the cowbells from the PSU fans. The Subs get a little bit excited, but Princeton was able to weather the storm in overtime. Jackson Green with the calls turnover, get it clear, and then just game time. By money Mitch, as I love him, and Coach Madeline to come out with a victory. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a real good first step for Princeton. With the Terps coming to Princeton next week, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to go to that game. So I think it's going to be dynamite next week, and given the fact that they had such a good effort on the road against Penn State, looking forward for them to see how they how they measure up against the Terps, especially after Maryland's big time win of their own against Syracuse this week.
Yeah, and worth pointing out, Princeton has not beaten Maryland since 2005, 2005?
4 might be. They haven't beat them since Tillman was there. They haven't led in a game since Tillman was there. So that's the first. Yeah. That's the first step.
Yeah, and they lost the 2006 quarterfinal. Maryland dominated that one.
So yeah.
All right, moving on to Johns Hopkins winning the Charles Street Derby 9-8 from the snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, to say the least. Grimy, muddy game in the rain. Weather played a big role in a lot of these games. I don't think it played any bigger role than this one. But Denver, Utah in the snow. Out of the early slate, this with the system going across the East Coast, this played out of that storm system played the biggest role. But Denver, Utah in the snow. But Hopkins with the 9-8 victory over Loyola, another game of so close yet so far. The 1-goal overtime loss to Maryland, now 1-goal loss to Hopkins. Where they could have won both of them, but here they are now sitting 0-3, despite having those 2 almost victories. Only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, as we like to say. But Hopkins now bumps up to 4-0 after that victory. So, another Charles Street Derby for the books.
Coffee is for closers.
They're only serving decaf at Ridley.
I wasn't feeling good at all. This guy, I thought Loyola was going to take this, but the Russell Melendez resurgence this season is real. I'm loving to see it. 4 goals today with an assist, but I thought it was like stout, even though it didn't have the greatest first half. I thought, gave up 4 goals in the third. I thought he did pretty well, especially like in the fourth or in like second half of the third and into the fourth period. I felt like
there was one big one, like a turnaround wrap around the cage.
Mm-hmm.
Late in the fourth quarter, was one big one.
I felt like we probably didn't focus on it too much in our preview show, Jake, this week. But he was returning to his former team and kind of facing them. So probably just some emotions, I'm sure, involved there. But really, I thought gutsy effort by the Jays. Just it wasn't going to be. We always say it's just a fight for a knife in the mud, and they were able to kind of really will themselves to victory here. I felt like almost a lot of everything wasn't kind of going their way, especially early on. Just seemed the offense wasn't really clicking, even though kind of expected with this type of rivalry that would probably hit the under for sure. And but just like I said, these kind of games, even games last week for Maryland, it wasn't the greatest game for the Terps, but I thought there was something to coming back down 5 in the fourth and then to take it into overtime and to win. Those things do build character and belief in yourself and that kind of those attributes that will carry you through the season and potentially the postseason. And I thought this was another example of that. Loyola's a proud program. I definitely don't say this is a backhanded compliment, but maybe one of the best 0-3 teams out there, to now have Terps and Maryland potentially be the second and third team in the country, essentially just losing by 1 in regulation and the other one in overtime. So, and, Georgetown's also, a top 10 team. So yeah, definitely a tough start for the Hounds, but they kind of show that they can play to a pretty high level. But for Hopkins to meet that, I thought especially in the last few minutes of the fourth, Jays were wondering who was going to come through, but Collison had that big goal. Really loved seeing that. Stewart came through. It was like a nasty day, and it's you're gonna have to kind of you may need a nasty goal like Collies to help get it done. But for Hopkins fans
around the deck,
start the season. Exactly. I think for Hop fans, to start the season 4-0, with Carolina coming in next week, it's just it's feeling really good about the season. Definitely good vibes. I like to just the way the Jays fought back. And I think it's a good sign for things to come this season.
The Loyola fans, man, they kind of they shoot from the always that we get the parking lot, so they shoot from the bleachers, the press box at Ridley, but every now and again they'll zoom out a little bit so you can see. And dude, it is at one point in time it was raining sideways.
Oh yeah,
and
first was bad.
And the stands were packed. It was. I don't know the 10. Actually, I had the.
I got the box score. I get it.
What's the attendance say?
I'll grab it. Sorry. Let's pull it up.
Yeah, go ahead. It looked packed. I mean, the students are crazy there. It's just an unbelievable environment. So it's something. Yeah, I don't know 12-6 but both these games. I mean, all you have to do is look. Is Loyola the last 3 years, 23, 24, and 25? This is the same team basically every year. And go look at the games they've played 23 and 25. They beat 23, they beat Hopkins and Maryland. And 25, they lose to them. They lose 25, they lose to Maryland in overtime, they lose to Hopkins by 1 goal right at the end. 24 last year, they get blown out by Maryland and they lost to Hopkins. That game I don't think was particularly close. That tells you all you need to know. That's the home field difference right there. This is the same Loyola team basically the last 3 years. The games at Ridley, it's either they're winning or it's right there. I mean, the 23 ones stand out just because neither game was really close the way they won those 2 games. But yeah, it's crazy. I thought they played much better today than they did against Maryland. I thought this was their best effort of the season. Overall, they shot really well. Problem today was they didn't get as many shots off. They only got 24 shots off. Max Watkinson made 13 saves. He stood on his head again. 19 turnovers for the Greyhounds. Not great. Hopkins they peppered him, man. I mean, they put a bunch of opportunities on it, and Loyola had it at 6-3. Really felt like this, it was exactly the kind of classic Ridley game. 3-1. Hopkins got it to 3-3 at halftime. I was like, okay, Hopkins in it, and I put kind of I took the game off on one of my screens because look, it's 3-3. These are the kind of games you feel like you can kind of look away from. And then I looked up on Twitter and it was 6-3 Loyola. I'm like, what? Loyola scored 3 goals in 5 minutes. I'm like, what the hell happened? Hopkins, you just kind of give they are making a bunch of the, don't show up in the box score plays. They had 3 sort of runouts in this game, where Loyola didn't get the backup and Hopkins was able to just run it out and win. They're playing hard and they're just a lot of the little plays right now Hopkins is making in these games. It hasn't been the difference in some of their other wins because Georgetown, they won that one, pretty handily. But this is the team right now. They look, that stuff that stuff shows up in these close games. They really this was an effort win. I mean, they just grinded it out, and this is the kind of thing that makes a difference, because you lose this game and you're 3-1, and you got Carolina coming next week, and that's a game we've talked about has been a bugaboo for them. And then you got Virginia. I don't know if it's Syracuse or Virginia is one. I think it's Virginia. Look, you got Virginia coming to Homewood, and Virginia's going to want to get the taste of this Richmond game out of their mouth. And then you got to go to the Dome and play Cuse. I mean, that's a tough stretch. You go 1-2 in that stretch easily. Or you can go 0-3, without being, look, Loyola's 0-3. And as you said, look, they're not a bad team. I don't know if they're a tournament team. They ain't a bad team. You can go 1-3 in that stretch very easily. We've seen Georgetown teams start the year like 0-3 and then make the quarterfinals. Mm-hmm. They're 4-0 in this one. They're 4-0 right now, and they could go 1-2 in the next 3 weeks, and they're still going to be in the top 10. You lose this one, you go 1-2. It's just, it matters. It's how you get in a rivalry win like this. But overall, I think just how the way this team is playing, I'm just really impressed. But they're doing everything right at this moment in time, and across the board. And really, guys, Melendez, Collison is one of the guys I've kind of talked about overall. I don't think there's superstars right now that I kind of see in the game, but he's one of the guys who is clearly one of the most improved players I've seen in the country. I mean, he's really taken it on, like, so far, as a guy who, when it's crunch time, he wants the ball. He sees it as like, this is my offense. I give me the ball. Like, I'm going to go make a play. And so, a superstar, I know, but he's playing like a first-team All-American in midfield, and he views it like, okay, they ran even that on that goal that he scored to tie it. They ran a play for him, the shot before that. Like, the play was designed for him to take the shot, and he just missed. I kind of was worried. I'm like, man, that was a great look. They just missed it, and they still managed to work it back around for him to then tie it. Like, both like when we always talk about this, do they have an alpha? And it's I hate that word. Please ban the word alpha from lacrosse lexicon, please, just please. But nonetheless, do you have a guy in crunch time who you want to get the ball to? Right now, when it's crunch time, Hopkins knows the ball is going to Matt Collison. And that matters. And when it was crunch time, they went to him, and he scored a goal very confidently to tie the game. That stuff, that you need that.
They don't show the number, Jake, on the box score or on Loyola's homepage, but it did look like a packed house, full house.
Okay. All right, quick run around to some interesting notes. Again, Ivy League starting play. Sometimes difficult to get your sea legs, and definitely say that with Penn and Yale. So, first off, Georgetown beats Penn 8-6 in DC. So the Hoyas.
You bet the under.
Again, playing in the rain.
Lock of the century
Hoyas
was Penn and Georgetown under. In the rain in Philly, post Super Bowl parade.
DC.
It was in DC.
It was DC, but still.
Oh, sorry, but still, like for the Penn fans, players, post Super Bowl parade and everything. So.
Yeah, I mean, this one was exactly what we thought, right?
I think this was the score in of the last two games. I think Georgetown had one game where they kind of, but yeah, it's pretty much a 2-score game for the last 3 times these two played.
Yeah, what are you gonna?
9-7, 8-6. Yeah, it's definitely common score.
Yeah, the game.
This Georgetown Penn game, all right.
No team led by more than 2 goals at any point. exactly what you Georgetown outshot Penn 41-25 in this one. So Hoya's volume shooting is a phrase you can use to describe Georgetown right now. Certainly, Ross Prince is kind of, as we said, Ross Prince kind of carrying the load for the Hoyas. Emmett Carroll's tremendous for Penn. I think Penn will be okay. Offensively, I do kind of have some questions, but yeah, they kind of got, they had to kind of, sort of, get their seat. They kind of bounced back into this one, but it was a low scoring game. Another Ivy League team I have more questions about.
Yes, Villanova 13, Yale 11. An auspicious start for the Elis to start their season, having an upset loss on the road on the main line to Villanova, everybody's favorite number 20 program in the country.
No Super Bowl hangover here, Save.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're not part of Philly, right, Ryan? Nova.
They are not in Philly, though. They are in the suburbs, so that helps. They're not distracted. Like we could even say with St. Joe's in a moment when we go around the scoreboard. But no partying out and about when you're nested away in the suburbs.
Look, I think Yale probably really strong team in the Ivy and stuff like that. But for the life of me, I just couldn't understand with some the people putting up like above Princeton and Cornell and some like ballots. I'm just like, Princeton and Cornell have like been the standard bearer of this conference for like the last 3 years, and Yale's not going to be defined by this early season loss to Villanova. But I was losing to an unranked Nova team, and then kind of seeing what Princeton did, like I said, like I think like they two programs and going different directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's the schedule up ahead for Yale. Now, granted, next 3 are in New Haven, but Army, Penn State, Denver, at Harvard, Cornell.
The Army game's a midweek game.
Yep, Army game is on Wednesday. Then they're off next weekend. But then, yes, Penn State and Denver the following 2 weeks. Then the start of Ivy League plays at Harvard and versus Cornell. They got to turn things around pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, the next 3 games are all Gil's asking, why is the Army at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday?
Because lacrosse.
Ryan, how far does it take to drive from West Point to New Haven? Get back to me on that.
I'm going to look up that now. I do not think it's that far at all, though. I would say it tops hour 45. Let me do the calculating right now.
Yale in this one, I mean, look, week 1 is tough for a lot of teams, but Yale, man, 21 turnovers, 8 failed clears. I mean, look, week 1 is tough, but that's rough. The defense was not. The defense is always kind of the question we've had for Yale. It wasn't terrible in this game, all things considered. I mean, it wasn't good. I'm not gonna say but I think I saw they were like 32% defensive efficiency. Now, granted, Villanova's offense isn't. It's not the Villanova offense you remember, like when Connor Kurse was running around a couple years ago, and the Fraqueros. But yeah, shot 28%. Did slide one fist. I mean, just Yale submarine themselves with just Villanova went 3 for 4. So also Yale took 4 penalties, and Villanova went 3 for 4 on extra man. So yeah, how to lose a game week 1? Take 4 penalties and give up 3 extra man goals. turn the ball over 21 times and fail 8 clears. That'll do it. Nova jumped out on top. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, did the math. 2 hours according to Google Maps from West Point to New Haven. Now, part of that is you have to Google Maps recommends going down the thruway and crossing the Tappan Zee rather than taking Bear Mountain. So there's no real direct east-west route in that part of the Hudson River, but you go down a little bit, then you're kind of direct shot across to New Haven. So about 2 hours.
So 2 hours. So I would say the answer is if you start the game at 5 o'clock and the game...
Extra time.
All right. Get to it. If you start the game at 5 o'clock and the game finishes, 5 o'clock game finishes at what? 7 o'clock probably, because it's a stream. So, 5 o'clock game finishes at 7. You shower, load up the bus. You're out of there, what, 8:30? 2 o'clock bus ride means you get back to New Haven at 11 o'clock. Goes to midnight. There you go. If you start the game at 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock, game ends at 3 o'clock. They're going to be back home for dinner. I have no problem with midweek games starting whenever they can start. I would like more midweek. Midweek games can start whenever the heck you want them. Just play them.
Yeah. It's the Saturday games that we have an agenda.
Yeah, midweek. Midweek games can start. I mean, look, maybe you can play a 2-3 midweek games. Midweek game. I can turn the. I can't turn the game on at work, but someone y'all can turn the game on. I can see if it's a local matchup, you put it on at night, like a Syracuse Cornell or something. But if you got if it's a little bit regional, have it in the afternoon so everyone gets home at a decent hour. To answer Adam's point here, obviously I know he's coming from the Hopkins perspective. I think the more thing that the media might be skating over with Yale was, again, we said this a lot. Leo Johnson and Chris Lyons are two great players. I'm very excited that they'll be representing, wearing Maryland colors next year. Yale losing 2 offensive players was not the problem last year. They still had Matt Brandow, who was a Toraton finalist, was he not? The way it got framed as if Yale's season just got submarined because they lost 2 attackmen. No, I think the problem was more that their defense was legitimately one of the 3 to 4 worst in any of the top 3 leagues. The 2 worst defenses in the Ivy League were Yale and Cornell. Not Brown or Dartmouth. Yale and Cornell. I think that's the problem. As it's been with Yale for 3 seasons. And so, again, the defense was the story here, and more of the issue was a lot of other issues. But nonetheless, look, you get down 5-2, and then you get close to 5-4, and then you get back down 8-4. Then they got to 8-7, and then they got down 10-7.
Jake, just to hammer in your point that offense wasn't the problem for Yale last year, despite losing 2 great starters. They were the number 5 adjusted offensive in all of NCAA last year.
They scored a lot of goals last year. Yale could score goals.
That wasn't the problem, yeah. Getting the ball in the net wasn't the issue. It was stopping the other team from getting the ball in their net. That was really Yale's problem for the last 3 years.
And that Army game is going to be interesting because Army is off to a great start. Which
this is the part where Adam was waiting for a whole hour and a half for us to talk about, with Army beating Rutgers 9-3.
In some ways, I feel like it's not surprising because Army last year, for the first 2.5 months of the season, was a top 5 team, and this is basically the same Army team. So if you're asking me, is Army being a top 5, playing like a top 5 team in the country super surprising? Well, this isn't really the question for Army.
Yeah.
The first 2 months of the season,
Patriot League play starts.
As we say, coffee is for closers, and Army needs to be drinking, not decaf in April and May.
We'll go around the scoreboard now. So Army beats Rutgers 9-3. Dominant victory for as Adam says. Rutgers has 11 goals in their last 2 games. And someone gave them a media poll vote this week.
Gil's point, this is true. They, better lose in the Yale game than the Colgate game like last year. I mean,
because the Patriot League, you got to win it to get into the NCAA's. If you screw up the Patriot League, then that blows your NCAA tournament berth. So, good point.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, the Yale win would be a pretty big win on the. It'd be a big win on the mantle. You could get it.
Yeah. Elsewhere, Duke survives a scare against St. Hose, as they accidentally tweeted out. Greatest typo in history.
Comma.
Let me get comma. So St. Joe's hangs tight with them, but alas, Duke.
I love that they didn't delete it. I love that they didn't delete it. Just leave that up there. Just
for those that have no idea what we're referencing.
Oh yeah.
The best part might be the comma after the Saint might be the thing that sends it over the top.
All right, I'm looking at.
But as you can see, St. Joe's had a hot start, but Duke able to pull away.
I'm looking at Army's schedule, and like Gil says, like Cuse is Yale's basically just replaced Cuse on Army's schedule. So I'm not sure the juice is there. The Patriot League's had a decent out of conference start this season. Adam asked, did anyone on the planet watch the Duke's St. Joe's, not St. Hose game, beside the players' parents? I think I watched it when I tuned in at like the last 5 seconds of the half when Duke.
They have deleted it.
Got the lead. They have deleted it? Oh, man.
Yes.
They have deleted it.
It could have been legendary.
I was going to share with the screen.
That's why you can't have nice things. What are we going to do? Otherwise, no. There's too much going on. Gillis says
too many noon games.
Need some Duke takes. I need to see them play like get some big games on their belt. They got Michigan next week, which
maybe. I think got the Princeton Penn weekend.
What was the final score in Michigan, Hobart, Ryan?
Michigan won 15-9 off of I believe they ended that game on like an 8-0 run because Hobart was up through the third quarter. Then Michigan pulled away. So that was almost a big upset in Geneva, but Michigan kind of handled them in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Also, other top 20 matchup also involving an Ivy League school. Harvard 12, Providence 10. That one ended up being a good one, too.
Yeah, Duke, the Princeton Penn stretch will be a little more indicative, I think, because Bellarmine, whatever. Jacksonville is terrible.
Didn't exactly look great in that one.
No, they did not. The offense for Duke a little, that might be something. Eric Molliver's put up good numbers. I'm happy for him. And then, this one against St. Joe's, that game was closer. Yeah, 11-9. That's a squeaker. So we'll see. Yeah, just need to see him get some. There's a lot of big games. Look, there's big games. There's going to be more big games next week. So I don't really have. I have not seen. I just have not. I have not seen. I don't think I've really watched much of them at all. I'll watch some of the Michigan game, but again, next week's a lot. So I'll try and watch some of the Michigan game next week to get just so I can get a peek of them. Because I just haven't really watched much of their games at all so far.
So elsewhere, another weird one. Delaware is 17, St. John's 10, but St. John's was leading that game for much of it too. Another case of a big run at the end. Like we were in the DM saying, wait a second, what the heck's going on here? So Delaware saves a little bit of face for the CAA. Today's games, Cornell beats Lehigh to start their season 18-10. That game was pretty much out of reach pretty early, though. Bellarmine 13-8 over Canisius in snowy Buffalo. UMBC 9-6. Put that around that 6-9. It reads on the scoreboard, which is nice. So UMBC over Drexel. Again, to Safe's point about maybe a Philly Parade hangover.
America East needed that one. America East is at a slow out-of-conference start. That's a nice indicator for the league.
High Point 17-11 over Robert Morris. Sacred Heart now up to 2-0 with a 11-7 win over Holy Cross. LIU beats Iona 14-9 in another one of those Throgs Neck Bridge Derby games. Vermont doubles up Manhattan 12-6. Notre Dame indoors beats Marquette 22-9. VMI 14-11 over Mercer. Don't look now, but the Mount is at 500 as they have beaten Wagner 15-9. Bryant 19-4 win over Merrimack. Dartmouth, pretty nice win to start their season in New Hampshire, 13-11 over Bucknell. Ohio State beats Air Force 17-11, which is now giving grandeurs of Safe thinking that they could pull off a big upset next week over Virginia because they won.
There's the big one, Safe.
Safe, please do not get your hopes up.
Virginia before we start talking about them again. So,
we failed to mention the big snow game. Denver survives against Utah 10-8 in the Rocky Mountain Derby. That one was a weird one. Yeah, Utah nearly pulled off that upset. So, weird one.
Yeah, that game.
Jacksonville
there was like at least an inch on the ground in that one, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Standing. Yeah.
Jacksonville beats
tough, but I would Denver. What Denver offense has been okay up to this point, but the main thing that we talked about at the start of the year, the main indicator of Denver, a warning shot, face-offs coming to fruition. Utah, 12 of 21 on face-offs against Denver in this game. Last week against Air Force, a game that Denver won 14-8. Air Force was Denver went 14-21, just 14-21 in that game. Face-offs looks like it could be a real ordinary out in Colorado for the first time in a generation. So how they're, but I think the offense there is okay, but they're having to adjust. They're having to adjust to life with without winning 65% of faceoffs, and something to monitor as we get into Big East play, where I think could be an interesting Big East with Providence potentially maybe in the mix. Villanova got a big win. We'll see.
Yeah, it could be an interesting four-way race there in the Big East. Jacksonville beats Marist 15-12. And don't look now, Fairfield is stout 2-0 with wins over Lehigh and now Brown in an 11-5 victory in Providence. And then yesterday's scores, Colgate beat Albany 19-14.
That game was larger. Scoreboard kind of flatters Albany in that one, doesn't it? I think Colgate was up big.
Yeah. UMass Lowell gets their second win of the season. Don't look now. UMass Lowell's 2-1 with a win over Mercyhurst 15-7. UMass beats Quinnipiac 19-5. BU with a good win over Monmouth 15-6. UNC, first half was quite close against Stony Brook, but then they pull away in the second half to win 9-4. Stony Brook team that went into Piscataway to beat Rutgers. If Adam's still watching, he likes me to point out that Stony Brook did beat Rutgers. And Hofstra. What are you doing? Siena beats Hofstra 17-11. Now, granted, Siena played BU close. They only lost by 2 to BU. So the Saints are having a pretty nice start to the season. But Hofstra, who hyped themselves up and made the most ridiculous graphic on social media over being in the Lacrosse Network's quote-unquote in the hunt category for beating first-year program Iona in their first ever game and a 0-3 Wagner team that has not lost by any less than 12 goals this year.
Until
they
today.
Decided to go out and fire off a graphic about how they're in the hunt in a website's top 20 poll.
I love how mad this is against Ryan. This is so great.
And they lose by 6 to Siena. I look, I mean, for Hofstra, look, they've lost the most relevant program title to the Stony Brook on Long Island, to the Stony Brook women long ago. But it's in the name, man. Have some pride. This used to be a program, and this game was supposed to be played in Siena. This game was supposed to be played up in Londonville. It got moved to Hofstra because of the weather, and they still lost by 6. Now, Gil says, yes, Siena might be decent. They brought it back a lot and hung with Boston, and they're a veteran team.
I picked Siena with a Mac preseason.
So they're going to be a solid squad. But this is what I mean about Hofstra. This friggin' program.
Ryan this hot. He gets more hyped over this than Syracuse.
Yeah, because I'm sorry. Do something with this program. This program has been on neutral for so many years. You're on Long Island.
Neutral would be a compliment.
Honestly, yeah.
But hey, it's all good because their head coach is going to show up at that private school in Virginia for that Sixes indoor tournament and hand out a trophy or something.
Tell him why you're mad, son. Tell him why you're mad.
Give him a piece of your mind.
If we recorded this show right after Syracuse-Maryland went final, I would have been a little bit more fired up over Cuse. But, I mean...
This is just nationalist pride, Gil, not so much Hofstra-specific pride.
Yeah, not just so much Hofstra as much as save some face for Long Island, man.
It's Long Island national.
This is for the island, Gil. This isn't really just...
They used to pack out Stewart Stadium, man.
We're losing recipes
pack it out
on Long Island in Little Egg.
Ryan's like one of those guys who thinks like you ever like one of those people who's like we should bring Yugoslavia back. Like that's like Ryan, but for like Long Island.
He's part of the Long Island secessionist movement to make it a state.
Like Ryan,
so have fun having that game.
Wants like a Long Island only team.
Like have fun having that Drexel game at the same time where Cornell Syracuse is being played across the street. Just at the same exact time. Like, friggin' Hofstra, man. Look, I know lacrosse is a different animal and everything, but I think you get my point here.
It should
change something.
Better.
You're not wrong. The thing is, you're not wrong. I mean, he's not wrong.
Loyola level success is something Hofstra, I think, could achieve because I think they're similar. You know, it's their biggest sport, right? The Hofstra has football, and Hofstra football used to be, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
But
they
now
used to
they-
have a team with Wayne Corbett back in the day, Wayne
Right,
Crosse,
yeah,
but
and
no,
yeah,
they
it's-
got rid of football back in, I think, 2008.
Yep. And so now the main football stadium is for the lacrosse team. It's kind of like a similar to Hopkins and Loyola to an extent. The biggest team on campus is the lacrosse team. Maybe Hofstra basketball, right?
Good basketball. Yeah, they got a good basketball team too, but mainly lacrosse.
So second for them, but similar to Hopkins and Loyola, lacrosse is important. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like it felt like it's, and just the absolute obscene amount of talent on the island alone. Like you'd be able to. I know everyone's trying to recruit those players, but it should be better. I'm sorry, it just should be better.
No, I mean I don't know how. There was a point in time that the degree with which they were funding that program, the expectation was tournament. I mean, every couple of years. I mean, they were funding at one point in time. They were funding that program to a pretty. I mean, they were top
more than any other mid-major.
Yes, top 15 level in the country. Are they still funding the program to that degree? I don't know. It's not.
Yeah, they're private school. I'm not sure.
If someone knows, let me know. Let us know. I don't know what the. And look, funding. To what degree people they're funding the program? Funding has changed in the last couple of years with NIL and stuff like that. But granted, with Hofstra, that's a different question because this is like a 10-year plus long conversation. But even still, like you could just compare it to within their own conference. And Towson has, in the last 13-something seasons, made a Final Four, a quarterfinal, and numerous NCAA tournaments. Delaware, within their own conference, has made a quarterfinal and a couple other NCAA tournaments. I don't think Delaware's funding their program any more than Hofstra is. UMass had an undefeated regular season, and then made another NCAA tournament last year. Drexel, Brian Volker. Trust me, brother, Drexel ain't funding that program any appreciably more than any point than what the Hofstra was. And Drexel made a quarterfinal in 2014, and then made another. Was very close to beating Notre Dame in the first round of the NCAA tournament a couple years ago. So that's UMass, Drexel, Towson, and Delaware. All four of those programs made multiple NCAA tournaments since Hofstra last has made the NCAA tournament. And here's the thing. Also, aside from that, that's big right there. So now, even if you want to be shareable, when's the last time they were even close? 2017.
The shot of the butt. They have not recovered since that shot from midfield.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You could even the 2021, the one where they got to the CAA championship that was 21. Dude, they were down. That was Drexel that year I just mentioned, where they nearly beat Notre Dame. Drexel was up 10-2 at that game at the half. That game wasn't even close. That game was they weren't even close in that game.
Well, I was there in 2014 CAA championship game. They lost to overtime to Drexel.
Yeah, there was a period at post 2011 where they had a couple cracks at it. There were 2014 and 2017 teams were the two main ones. I think they had another decent year in there. There was a clear fall off through 2017, but even still, you could say, look, okay, we're still doing program. They hit a point after 2021 where it's like, what are we doing? Ryan Tierney spent his entire career there playing for his dad, and so people ask the question, and it's just sort of I don't know what to say at this point. I think the fans are kind of at that point too, where they're just sort of I don't know, the PLL thing does sort of feel like it's kind of who does the recruiting at that program? If the coach spends all summer being head of competition or refereeing for I don't know. That's the thing. Like Ryan's not wrong. Like it is. To be that said again, there was the level of is it depends. The level of anger kind of depends again to what the investment is. If they are investing to the degree they were at one point in time, it's an Ohio State situation because it's absolutely insane. Like if they're getting the results they are compared to what they were investing when like Danowski was there, brother. I don't think that's the case. Even still, it's like, come on, man. Like you can still be a competitor in the CAA, which they're not. But so yeah, it's disappointing.
Mm. Yeah, but overall, yeah, like CAA, not a great start to the season for the CAA.
No, interesting. League could be kind of if Fairfield's off to a decent start, kind of 2-0. I think Baxter's kind of got things kind of turned around there. Can build things up in Delaware. Towson needs to win tomorrow against Navy. Just kind of get things going. Could be a more competitive race at the top than we sort of expected. A10 might be St. Joe's played a competitive game against Duke. Maybe A10 might be turning things around after a slower start to the year. It feels we'll have to see. Notre Dame finally gets in action against kind of get some live rounds next week. Also, I think their first game outdoors because I think they've been in the bubble both games so far. I don't know if were they outside against. I think they were indoors against Cleveland State. Yeah,
they were indoors against Cleveland State.
Yeah, so finally live rounds for them. I think they'll be a heavy favorite against Georgetown. But look, Georgetown was the last team to beat them.
They got to go to the D.C. area 2 straight weeks.
No,
Maryland.
The Maryland game's in Georgia.
Oh, that's right. That's in Atlanta.
So, finally get some live rounds for them, which would be interesting. Just because otherwise, I think there's a clear top 5 like ranking wise, but as far as where these teams actually shake up, quality wise, I think it's still an open question, which is fun.
All right, so that'll just about do it for week 3. A very busy week, so glad you could join us. We went the power hour and a half. But you know what we can do if you really enjoyed our analysis and had some fun with us tonight? Give this video a like if you really liked it. Thank you, Jill. Cheers to you as well. Also, if you really enjoyed this, how about you smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications too. So whenever we go live, you'll be able to join the fun again next week. And, we, as you see with our videos, we have fun with the peanut gallery as well. So feel free to join in the conversation
Absolutely.
when you tune in next time too. Otherwise, you could follow us. I'm at Ryan McD29.
At Erie_Barrister.
At college_cross. Follow the account.
Yep, and Jake and Safe will be back at it with a midweek preview episode this week, and we'll be back at it next week for quite a stacked noontime lineup, to say the least.
Early power hour, though. That's the one positive.
Yes. So on that note, have a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy your holiday weekend. Hopefully you have off Monday as well. And Daytona 500 weekend as well. So, I'll be live tweeting that tomorrow. Bless you.
Thank you.
And on that note, stay hydrated.
See you out
there. Thanks for president. Stay warm, folks. Go Terps.